They're a very different brand than a lot of the big DTC brands, especially the ones that are kind of in hot water right now. We never had a real reliance on big digital spends. Customer acquisition was always, for the most part, organic through the work of our marketing team and our creative team and the direct connection to the consumer that Connie fosters. So we didn't
Why is
see.
that? Why did you decide to go that route?
Because it's cheaper. Yeah, I mean, I think that because we weren't VC funded, because we were started off as a scrappy company, East Fork came from it grew from a craft, a very singular craft pursuit where Alex was making pots and selling them directly to customers in this very old-fashioned way, and then we slowly started to make the product more relevant to a wider swath of customers, and we started talking directly to a wider swath of customers. And so it wasn't like a brand that was launched with a fully comprehensive brand strategy or a 5 to 10 year vision. It was just like a very natural growth into where we are now. Of course, now we've done all of the work to define what our 5, 10 year, 20 year goals are. Of course, they've changed. That's changed a little bit in the last few weeks, but so we never, because none of us came from marketing backgrounds or business backgrounds, the idea of like cost of acquisition didn't come around until far after we'd been doing this business. So we'd been doing the grassroots, scrappy, direct to consumer messaging for a long time before we really saw ourselves as a business or as an established business with employees. So that came pretty easily. Also just like values alignment, like it doesn't feel good to give money to Facebook. And so if I can avoid it, I will. And that's this year, especially, I see no reason to spend money with Google or Facebook. If anything, I thinking about when we do have ad dollars to spend again, I'd love to consider spending them in print media. But yeah, I mean, right now our marketing budget is, when did we end it with last year? 8% of
Top line.
Yeah. Our last 2019, our marketing budget was 8% of top line. So, much lower than other competitors.
And how did you spend it?
Salaries.
Yeah. I think we spent $100,000 with Facebook on $4.5 million in top line. So minuscule, I think, in comparison.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was an easy transition for us, and we had such a base built in because we not only communicate internally in that holistic way, but externally as well. So because of when this thing hit and we really started reacting early March, we put all of our seconds online that we were planning to sell in person. And we asked our consumers to support us through this moment. And March turned out to be the biggest month in company history, bigger than November, December last year, by 30%. So that was pretty amazing.
The nature of your category, right? Or you think that is a combination of having a very strong community?
I think it's both. I mean, I'm curious to see some perform. I know that there are some companies in our category that have kind of gone silent and like aren't returning customer emails, and so I'm curious to know. I don't have a really firm grasp on how other companies in our category are performing right now. Obviously we've seen like a lot of furloughs and layoffs. We haven't had to furlough or lay off anyone yet. But yeah, I think that what Alex was getting at is that like we'd set a precedent since the beginning of our company to speak really honestly, transparent in like a very unbuzzwordy way. Like our brand is kind of centered around very honest communication, person to person, from us to customers. And so and also we've never been a company that's only talked about product or aesthetic or design. Like we've always talked about other things that were happening in our community, other goings on of our business. So when it came time for companies to be kind of required to lift the veil and say, hey, here's what's happening, here's what you can expect from us, our customers were already so conditioned to being talked to like that it was really a very easy way. So it continued, we were able to stay very on brand. when a lot of companies were kind of having to put their first foot into that sort of type of communication. So I think that was really helpful. And so now, like when we're transitioning our content into much more kind of crowdsourced, decentralized, like a bunch of our team members are also, like I basically sent a bunch of people home with cookbooks that we sell in our store, and it was like, make things, you know, we have this much money to spend, put it on TikTok, send me a video, I don't care what it looks like. It felt very like comprehensive to our brand already, because we've always had that very kind of some of our website is very polished, but all of the content that we put out on Instagram, say, is very rough and just unfiltered, unedited. So that also, there was no dissonance that we had to go through.
So it was always like that. So if it was always like that, it's much easier. Otherwise, aesthetic, it was consistent. So I understand.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then the other thing is, I mean, I've heard from other people in the home goods space that they're having good sales. Like my brother works for Zwilling, the German company that owns Stove and a number of other, that they've been having great direct to consumer sales. But our sales were all, it wasn't like people were buying this because they wanted the dishes now. They were buying with we were explicitly stated that we don't know when you'll get these. Like, this is, you're purchasing these and you may get these in a month, you may get these in 2 months. And so
not
people
need driven, it was more brand affinity driven.
Yeah, so we were able to quickly pivot and do that second sale and pre-sale. We'd never done a pre-sale of like a seasonal color before, but we had those 2 back-to-back sales moments that kind of gave us some cushion for the month of April to shut down the factory and fulfillment center. So we didn't have that. We could kind of comfortably tell the team that they could take a couple weeks off to like not have to worry about, you know, scrambling to do to get the pots made immediately. So
Right. And where is go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say our ability to do that does come back to that sort of holistic management of the entire organization, with really strong leadership in finance and a lot of discipline there. Like, we've always been incredibly disciplined, in part because we weren't on that treadmill, the customer acquisition treadmill. I mean, we grew 100% last year, but we just never were there. And it's really funny. Like, I have been experiencing a little bit of schadenfreude because we educated ourselves early on to the DTC model, to things that these companies were doing. We learned about the digital stuff, all the performance stuff, but and we talked to some VCs and had a bunch of conversations around that. But now it feels amazing to be in the position we're in, and you see companies that have raised $180 million laying off 50% of their workforce. You know, it's just
like, think about that, because those are companies, like, they raised a lot of money. When you think about the way, like, they raised a lot of money last fall, and yet they fired a lot of people, they furloughed a lot of people. And for me, that was like, wait, something is wrong here, because you are keeping yourself on a growth track at the expense of your employees. How do you expect anyone to work for you ever again? If, you know, so there is a lot of that, like, it's in a sense like, oh, they were who we thought they were, you know, they are who we thought they were, you know, because all those companies that were exposed, it was like, oh, bad internal culture. All of a sudden, their employees are the first to go out to the door, and you can't really have a sustainable brand if you don't cultivate those employees. I mean, Danny Meyer built his entire empire based on keeping his employees, like in the entire, from Shake Shack you go to you know, like to Union Square Market, you go further up, you know. So I'm wondering what your approach to that is.
I mean, so where should we even start? I mean, the East Fork exists for the benefit of the people who work here, kind of first and foremost. We didn't launch a company to fill a hole in the market. We really we started growing this company because we realized that we had the ability to provide thoughtful, like, real, engaging jobs in Western North Carolina that paid well, that had benefits, with that were to build a compassionate place to work. And so that didn't, again, it was something that had already been practiced. So in this moment, it was the natural thing to do, to start thinking about, well, how do we make sure that our people are going to be okay? And so in a lot of ways, like we're, and also keeping people engaged has been really easy over the last few weeks. Like we've done writing prompts, we've been just in constant contact with everyone on Slack, and not just like the sales and marketing team, the production team, the ops team, the finance team. Everybody feels very included in that. There's no like, we've done a lot of work this past year to kind of remove some of the cliquishness that can happen when between departments. obviously, like we've dealt with our share of that, but it's something that we've been having conversations with and actively dealing with for a long time. We all work under one. We have 78 people right now. And outside of the retail staff.
That's a lot. It's kind of like growth from 0 to 50. It's sort of okay. But then when you start growing, it's a different company.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, to go from 20 to 60 in the year was.
Wow. Yeah. And they keep the culture and they keep the best process, figure it out. Yeah.
But I think, again, because we've done a lot of that, that culture building prior to this, what we're hoping is that, or what we're seeing is that people are feeling very taken care of by their workplace. They're feeling respected and heard and valued. And people are really excited to come back to work, and they know that they're in a really privileged position, that like they see their friends getting laid off left and right, or people getting friends of mine who own businesses who hadn't communicated about COVID-19 at all, and then all of a sudden sent an email that's like, everyone's furloughed, with no explanation, no follow-up, like just like horrible ways of communicating. And it's just it's so out of our nature to even think about like communicating to employees like that. So I think we're going to be coming back as a team after this, just much stronger, and we're excited to be there, and really people are just taking care of each other all across the company.
Right. And if we go back to a little bit to organizational sort of setup that you guys have, how did you figure out, first question, and second question, how did you figure out is what the best model is, and sort of like were you like just trial error, or did it sort of happen organically? How did you go about, what is your process? Is there anything that you can sort of advise other companies that are your size or smaller but are growing quickly? What they can sort of learn from you?
Best organizational structure in general, like
no, for you guys, like because you said you grew in a year like twice, like 2 times. So I mean that's never an easy process.
I think the first thing is that like what we really struggled with, and it finally things clicked, that early on we found a company to help us write an org chart. Everyone had their titles. People were trying to really define their roles and responsibilities within those titles. And the executive team, I mean, Alex and I are married. That is one complicating factor of our business model. And then our business partner, John.
He's like fading in the bushes, Homer Simpson style.
It brings its ups and downs for sure. And our business partner is like the most conflict averse person in the entire world. And so when Alex and I get into it, he's just like, oh. And so we would really get into it over the org chart early on. And something that like we struggled with the first year in the factory was that we had this chart, and everyone had their titles, and we were all trying to define who was supposed to be doing what. And people just had these really rigid expectations of what their job was supposed to be. And I was like, guys, we are in this crazy growth mode. Like this org chart is going to have to be flexible. We're going to have to be planning, like this is your job for potentially the next 6 months. And then it can go one of 7 different directions, and getting people really to be more comfortable with that being the nature of the job, instead of like a distraction from their job, was really helpful. And my dad is a public defender, and he was like, I was telling him about kind of our org chart woes, and he was like, I don't even understand, like at my job, like I as this person, like my responsibility is to do whatever I need to do to help this person, and that person's responsibility is to do whatever they need to do to help this person. And that kind of explaining that to my teams and rearranging my sales and marketing and creative teams to be much more fluid was really helpful. The things that we're still struggling with, like Alex and John and I have done a really good job of figuring out where our skills are and kind of staying in our little circles. But, you know, obviously, like with these huge business decisions that have to get made, Alex is the CEO, is like, he's really more invested in the production side of things than in the other parts of the company. And so having like a decentralized, like a CEO, but not having him like sit in charge of the other members of the C-suite has caused like a little bit of.
Yeah, we've always run it very flat on top between John, Connie, and myself. And there's certainly some moments of tension there. I mean, it's messy. It's going to be messy. I think for me, having the three of us, like if it was just one of us or even a combination, I don't think we'd be where we are. We each add a very specific thing. And that's what strengthens it. And even in moments where it feels like there's tension between, say, John, who's in charge of kind of finance and operations, he's very conservative. I'm not conservative. So there's a lot of tension there, but where we end up sitting in the middle is usually it's a good balance between a kind of bullish, just kind of pushing things forward
Tenacious.
Constantly, which is me, to John. We sort of land in a nice middle ground there. But I don't feel like we've given, or I've, advice for. I feel fortunate to have Connie and John.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is like, because of we've been stuck in this cycle of our demand outpacing our ability to produce the product. So in charge of marketing, I haven't had to be in a position where I could necessarily be more aggressive. I've always kind of had to work with the realities of our production capabilities, and I haven't had to make a stand of like, we need to go harder, spend more, do, trudge forward here into the unknown. Sorry, that was like a terrible, we didn't answer your question very directly.
You did. And I think there, like, before we go to the next question, because I do want to understand where your growth comes from, because you said we had aggressive growth and you seem like you really do have a lot of traction without spending much. So I want to know more about that. But I thought it was really good what you asked. It's more like, is it like generally organizationally? So if you can extrapolate something for general organization, what would you say that works in your experience?
I think that what works is extremely clear communication of the mission and the goal. And outside of, like, especially in the last few weeks, like we had just this last year put a lot of structure into how we meet, annual planning, quarterly planning, KPI monthly meetings. Like we had done a lot of work to get there. And it was feeling kind of effective in terms of like, we were all better understanding what everybody was doing, and we could all speak each other's lingo a little bit better. I mean, even just like getting together and like laying out like, what are the KPIs for every department and where do they connect? When you say this acronym, what are you actually talking about? What do you need from us? That was really helpful. But also in the last 4 weeks, when all of those meetings got thrown out the window, when we put the second sale together and when we put put the pre-sale together, those two sales moments, which would have taken us weeks and weeks and weeks of planning had we not been forced to do them immediately, they got pulled together so quickly and they went off without a hitch. Like they were our easiest launches, most successful launches to date. And I think we finally realized that we needed to be getting out of our own way a little bit and really drill down on like, what's the end goal? And then each department has to just trust each other that they're going to figure that out and know how to speak each other's language and ask directly for what they need. And so, yeah, I think that now after this, like we can be much more efficient in getting projects pulled together without so much tedious bureaucracy or nitpicking getting in the way. But it kind of required like a year of really wrestling with each other and building some deep core trust between leadership. And yeah, so I think that's really it, is like figure out, like make sure everybody is aligned on the end goal, and then learn how to trust people to do what they need to do to get there. But that doesn't, you can't just say that, like you need to build that trust over time.
Absolutely. And you have to have a like highly skilled people, because a team wants to work with a team. So it sounds like very like common sense, but actually it is a lot of work to kind of like hire the right people and like help them trust each other. So it's much easier to build this org chart and have like, oh, this is like how it goes. That's what doing is, it is harder.
Yeah, and that's where we started, and then we realized that really we can't look to all of these other companies, and I had people send org charts from all these other big companies that sort of look like us in some way, and that doesn't work. You have to go through the mess, and you have to figure it out yourself, and figure out where people need to be placed, and if somebody's struggling somewhere, instead of just, see if there's a better spot for them where they can focus in more or shine more, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we have quite a few people on the team who started off in very different positions than they're in now, and they really struggled. And there were a lot of moments where we were like, oh, they need to go. This is going to be bad. And now they're some of our highest performing people on the team. And you're never going to know that if you stick to an org chart as if it's life or death. It's like people have really just like, you have to give people an opportunity to surprise you or prove you wrong, or show you something that you didn't know could come from them.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So how, I'm impressed by your growth story. So I would like if you can like share a bit of that, not in just like, oh, in 2016 this happened, but it's more what is dynamic there. What did you see that it really like worked, and it worked exponentially, and what you thought would work didn't work? And is there something that there's some like learnings? Because what I'm seeing is like everyone is following the same playbook, and it doesn't sound like that's what you've done. So what happened instead?
Yeah, we definitely did not follow that playbook. We at the core of this for me is loving to make pottery. So that's the biggest thing. I started it. I did 2 years of very traditional apprenticeship. I left. I did my own thing, built my own workshop. John joined. Connie and I were together at that point. Connie got more involved, and then the three of us sat together and we watched ceramics becoming in vogue in all these places in New York and in LA. And T Magazine was writing about it, and we were like, we've dedicated our life to this, and there's these people who have a hobby who are suddenly now getting written up. We want to be part of that, and we think we have something to add to that.
Mm-hmm.
We had a real chip on our shoulders for a minute. We were like seeing like really, as like Alex is a very serious potter, and we saw this like pretty bad pots like getting I don't know, mentions in X, Y, and Z, and we're just like we don't make fun of that stuff anymore, but back then when we were like had something to prove,
yeah. Well, I mean, if you focus on just doing your thing and do it really well, it's going to happen anyway. So
we had to have a little tantrum about it for like 2 months. now
we're all humans.
So yeah, we started to think about how could we speak to more people. And a customer of ours called us up kind of out of the blue and asked if we would be interested in an investment, if he could invest. And he thought maybe he was going to put in $20,000-$30,000 for a new piece of equipment or something. And then we had already started this kind of formulating this idea and this plan. And we put that in front of him, and he got really excited. And we raised a little more money. We raised about 1.8 million, which for the most part went to manufacturing equipment, building a new factory. So it was all in CapEx spending and some hiring, but not going into customer acquisition. And the customer acquisition piece is really Connie and how she communicates on Instagram, through our emails, how she speaks to people. I mean, Connie,
these are your main channels, like email and then Instagram. Is that
and then organic? I mean,
word of mouth.
Yeah.
but again, the reason behind it was always person focused. It was always focused on the making and the doing and the learning, like the exploration of how do you go from making pottery on a wheel in a workshop in the middle of the woods to we have a little factory now and it's growing quickly. We'll be probably one of the largest small scale manufacturers in the US pretty soon if we're not already. And then always having another organization for me that I was looking at. So for a while it was, say, Heath was the company that they were so big, we were never going to get to be that size. And that bar just keeps shifting and moving further and further. So we've continued to raise a little bit of money, but it's all been internal and through individual, high net worths. And that was important, that we couldn't do what we did without that, because we did to grow. It's expensive. All of the capex is really expensive to manufacture.
But you're profitable, right? Consistently profitable, or no?
We'll be profitable. Well, we'll break even this year. And last year we've had basically 2 years of not being profitable. So we'll break even this year, and next year hopefully would be profitable. And then we'll swing, like after a year of big investment, it'll take a year or two to grow back into that. But
right. And where do you see your next big investment going into?
I mean, the things that we were looking at now was a new factory, a bigger factory, because we're already sort of at capacity where we're at. So that was the big thing, was building a campus essentially, for people to come and visit, and with restaurant and all that stuff. Right now we're kind of focused inwards on being as lean as possible. We've got about 50,000 square feet that we operate out of. So it's just funny. I spend so much of my time thinking about the physical world and all of these constraints that a lot of these other companies, certainly, they just, you put in your purchase order and you wait 3 months and then you just sell it. So
you're in a much better position longer term, because you are vertically, you own your supply chain, your production, because you're not in a situation that, like, for right now, yes, you had to close that, but you can reopen really quickly. Like the moment the restrictions are lifted, you're going to be there. You're not going to wait someone in China or in Italy or in India or wherever to start like building. You're not like, and pick a number, So I think that, and you've seen what House has done when they're partnered with restaurants, because one, there is a loophole on the low level on alcohol that you can send online, and second, because they're like you, they own the supply, so you have a lot of freedom. And I think, yes, even if profitability due to those investments is not, it will. Where does your demand come from? From this? So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we've tried everything. Like last year we had done like a little bit of affiliate marketing. We'd tried some influencer marketing. We had a PR firm for a while. We worked with a PR firm in New York for about a year. And it was a good lesson in learning how to do PR. So we brought that internally in September of last year, and from someone who started off as a sales associate, and now she runs our PR, and Erin, who emailed you.
Oh, yeah, she's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I did open her email after I didn't reply.
Yeah.
It's a lot incoming. I don't even.
Well, I mean, I think like that's kind of sums it up, is that like sometimes we make ridiculous asks, like not with people, because we really believe in what we're doing and we do think that we're differentiated. And so we're like, if someone has a conversation with us, we think that they might be interested, and we just have to not be afraid to make the ask, because here we are in North Carolina. We don't have these big giant marketing budgets. Like we see, homeware people open up and they come from brand backgrounds. Like they used to work at T Magazine, or they worked at Warby Parker or whatever. And so they have all of this huge network of connections that they can just call marketing. And like, we didn't have that. We're just like, we started off as very, we've just been here kind of plodding along. And so we kind of have to make a stand for ourselves and confidently say, no, what we're doing is really interesting and it's worth investigating. And I'd like for you to check it out. So there's a lot of that, a lot of big asks. I had a handful of connections to some writers. I used to work I lived in New York and did some like transcription and editing for like cookbook writers. And so I would find my one connection and find someone at Bon Appetit who was like maybe a junior editorialist, and I would start like developing a relationship with them. And yeah, it's a very scrappy marketing, guerrilla marketing, really. Like when we had a show, we brought like a bunch of Southern makers up to Counterculture. We've made some really good, smart partnerships. So Counterculture is a coffee roaster here in North Carolina, in Durham, and we had planned this year of doing like a whole event series with them across the country in their tasting rooms and having big second sales or whatever. Obviously that didn't happen, but when we were up there in the fall, we were like, let's just bring up a bunch of pots and call up the person that we know at Bon Appetit and see if they might want us to bring pots and have a second sale in their test kitchen, and like, you know, give like a good discount to the Bon Appetit staff. And they're like, sure, that sounds great. We're all big fans. And so the entire staff that day went home with Bon Appetit or with East Fork pots. And so now here we are in quarantine cooking, and every single person on that staff is using East Fork every single day. And people are asking like, where'd you get that bowl? So we focused on those sorts of, like, the affiliate and influencer thing never really took off for me. It felt very disingenuous, and I could not handle one more email that said, do you want to collaborate? I'd start like replying like really mean things. I was like, do you know what the definition of collaboration? Like, not mean, but I'd be like, that is not a collaboration. Like, me sending you free stuff is not collaborating. Stop.
Yeah.
Like, that's a special word, collaboration. Like, I just hate how influencers have just like ruined that word for everybody. I was like, I'd love to do real collaborations. Like,
Right.
yeah. So we've been, and then restaurants, you know, use our stuff. Like a bunch of restaurants in town here use our work, and it holds up really well. The products that we make it's a durable, useful product that appeals to a lot of people, and it's really easy to like, you want to photograph it and post it on your Instagram. It doesn't have like yucky branding on it or logos or whatever. It's an easy thing to gift someone, and for them to like kind of organically, naturally just put it on their Instagram without having to ask them or like send them stipulations. And so that social sharing happened very easily. And then our customer care team is just like, we are old school. We send a lot of thank you notes. We send a lot of little gifts. We keep people, like last year we were really thinking about acquiring new customers until we started looking at the numbers, and we're like, we have so much room to grow with lifetime customer value. Like, we need to dedicate our small team to that. And so that's all we do, is just nurture customers all day long. We have whole Rolodexes of their, you know, do they have kids? What are their interests? And so if something comes up, we directly reach out, and it's, yeah, just kind of cheesy old school relationship building.
That's like maintaining that relationship going, because that's where the money is. It's so much cheaper to retain relationship. They're going to like buy more rather than spend acquisition. They come once and they go, and your money went out of the window. Because
and they tell their friends about the product. I mean, it's something that people use on their homes. So if they come, people have dinner. It's easy to, yeah. So we really think of nurturing customers, and coming back to like that holistic brand management. I think that like that true human relationship building is something that we really do at every single department, internally, externally, where you know, I love that article, like, brands are not your friends, that I forgot who wrote it, but it was a really good article, because like so many companies do try to take that like, we're pals, like I'm gonna DM you sort of approach to it, but it's not real relationship building. And I think we have somehow,
Tone of Voice is not a brand. You can have like this, like, chummy, we are BFFs, Tone of Voice, but if your brand doesn't have values that you share with those customers, and you don't consistently deliver those values and have a point of view, then it's just like noise, I guess. Yeah,
exactly.
And that's what I wrote in that article for Fast Company about holistic brand management, is how you slice and dice your data. And I think a lot of companies have opportunity right now to really focus on their data management. What you said, what is the psychographics of these people? What is their life situation? It's not like how much they spend, but what did they buy and what else they can buy that makes sense for their lifestyle. And you'll be surprised how few companies really look at their CRM like that. They just look, oh, what was the last purchase? It was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. What does this mean for the next? It's very transactional. So it's really great to hear that.
Yeah, we had again, because none of us come from traditional marketing backgrounds and we don't have a lot of money to spend on like data analysis, but my little sister was working for us for a time, and honestly, I didn't want to manage her, but I needed to give her a project. She was like our marketing associate, and I was like, okay, Emily, like I want you to do some just very manual searching of our top 1,000 customers, like go on their Facebook pages, go on their Instagram pages, like Google search them. And she put together this hilarious chart that we like kind of typified everybody, like, and like, do they have animals? Just, we got a really good sense of who our customers were. And what was really a relief is that we don't have, we very different from D2C brands where everyone falls in a pretty narrow demographic. Like our product and our brand message appeals to a really wide demographic. So while we are selling more pot, or more orders are coming from people between 30 and 45, people over 50 are spending more dollars. Like we still have like, and then people who are, a lot of our Instagram followers are under 25. And so I think that we've done a good job of both appealing from a cultural perspective to a much younger audience, and then from a product perspective, durability perspective, to that like boomer audience who are like interested in products that last a long time, like the direct communication from a real person, like someone who calls them on the phone. So yeah, we're not like, we're seeing.
Yeah, that's what I meant, where I was like, where does demand come from? Because you clearly like sort of rode on their cultural wave with a certain audience, but at the same time, your value proposition is much wider. So you're seeing, if you had to break down those, I mean, age groups are very, like let's talk about broadly what different people need. Some need quality, some need like that hype potential, some, like how would you break them out? Like where do you see your growth sort of?
Well, I mean, the growth really, like, it's coming kind of from everywhere. Like we have a lot of older folks who are in their 60s who are downsizing, and they don't want to deal with touching their stuff. And so they're just doing like a small dinner set purchase. And then a lot of the 60 and up crowd buys.
It's very emotionally charged though for them who are downsizing. So yeah, you need to tread very carefully there, right?
I mean, we don't market that it's not something that we've like have a tagline for at all. It's just something that we've naturally seen come into us. And so those customers are the customers specifically who our customer care team nurtures like crazy. Like they send thank you notes, they send pictures, like they'll like take a photo of a vase that they put flowers in, and Savannah will be like, oh my gosh, Jim, this is so beautiful, I'm going to share it with my team. And then she does. And so that's really where we focus the most direct one-on-one contact, is with our over 60 crowd. And then lots of people in the like our age, 35, 45, they're building sets a little bit more slowly, so doing like plates, and then we see them making more purchases over time in smaller purchases. And then people who are younger, under 30, are buying a mug at a time, or our pantry selection right now is going wild. And so they'll buy a mug, and those people obviously are very vocal on social media. So we nurture all of them. We just nurture them very differently. And so we'll do more social sharing of, UGC for younger people, our kind of our center demographic, like the people who are our age, really follow us because of our brand values and because of how political we are. And so we really talk directly to them when we're talking about our responses to North Carolina policy or whatever it is.
Right.
And then older folks, it's much more kind of white glove one-on-one.
Yeah.
Then there's another piece I don't think we've touched on, which is this limited edition drops that we do, which in the beginning, when I was making individual one-off pieces, we had a collector base. And then we thought to ourselves, well, we're going to make the same thing every day so that we can kind of not limit ourselves to collectors. But we've inadvertently created this massive group of collectors because we release colors or new forms in different kind of configurations. for those color drops, like they're big for a company of our size, and people, you know, are on the website waiting, and so we see a huge amount of traction from that, from the limited edition stuff. And
How
it's
big is your limited edition?
So for our pre-sale, anywhere from 300 to 800K.
So yeah.
But yeah, they're pretty. It's only 3 months, you know, basically worth of product, and that's on top of the core collection that we're still making. But we're now, with the COVID situation, we're thinking about transitioning to a pre-sale only model for the rest of the year, just so that we can make our production a little bit more efficient. And so we're thinking about really making bigger use of those drop moments.
Right.
They just recently did a I know the CEO of Grailed, and I was talking to him about, like, you know, could we use your platform in some way? Because I've always thought that people, before the stuff starts going onto eBay, it'd be a great opportunity to capture that traffic and control those transactions in some way, and not necessarily do that in order to monetize it, but do that in order to have a closer connection with the consumer and sort of foster that that customer community. But they just launched something on Instagram, like a buy, sell, trade account, where people can trade
the pieces that they have